If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe and click on the notification bell so you never miss out when I upload a brand new video. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert a GUI into the game now. So I'm going to give you my free GUI which I'm using for this project. Now it's not the best GUI, I'm sure you can do better, but I'm going to insert it into the game. And I'm going to just show you how it looks. So we've got a black BG, and that stands for black background. And that is just a simple black background which will appear to animate the screen when they load up the shop. So it's going to fade. It's going to fade like this. So we're going to set that to 1, so it's completely transparent for now. We've also got a shop frame. Now this is what it looks like, and obviously when they're in the shop it's going to look something like this, so they can click on the arrows to move it forwards and backwards. Down here this blue button will be telling them that they can either equip it or buy the item, and we've got an exit button here as well. We're going to want to just delete the script. Well, obviously there's not going to be a script for you. I'm going to delete these scripts so we can add them back in ourselves and code it ourselves. But I'm just going to walk you through everything inside this GUI to make sure you know what everything's used for. So obviously we've got our GUI object. We've also got a value, and that's going to be the current box that we're looking at. So will it be box 0 that we're currently focused on? Obviously when we move forwards or backwards, that's going to be set to box 1, box 2, box 3, or the other way around, you get the idea. We've got an initiate shop bindable event, and you'll see what that's for later on. We've got our black BG, which we just went over. Now in our shop frame, we've got a value called model name. And what that is going to do is it's just going to tell us the name of the tool which we're currently looking at. So are we looking at the better drill or the epic drill at the moment? We've then got our basic image buttons for back and forward, our buy button, our exit button, and a description and a title. Okay, so you can't actually see them at the minute, but that's because we haven't got any text in them. So now what we can do is we can start scripting this GUI so that we can show the different items when we're in the game, and we're also going to need to script their camera as well, so that when they when they enter the shop, we can change their camera from being set to their player to be over here on the boxes. Okay, so we're going to start scripting the camera first. So let's go into the shop frame and let's just make it invisible for now. And then we can go back into the shop, insert a local script, and this is where we're going to script the camera. So we're going to have a remote event in server storage, and this is going to be called open shop. So whenever we step on this block next to Nako, it's going to trigger that remote event, and then when the client receives that remote event, when it's triggered, we're going to switch their camera to box 0, and we're going to open up the GUI and initiate this bindable event, which will open up the shop frame and set everything going. So the first thing we want to do is create a variable, or create a few variables actually, for replicated storage and all of our GUI objects. So we can say local replicated storage equals game get service or replicated storage. And then we're going to want to get the shop frame. So I'm copying and pasting these in because it's going to make it a lot quicker. So shop frame, lowercase s for shop, uppercase F for frame. Make sure to get that right. Same for replicated storage. We're just getting the shop frame where all of our GUI elements are located. We're then going to get the back and forward buttons. So local back equals shopframe.back and local forward equals shopframe.forward. We're then going to get the buy, description, title GUI elements. So everything inside of our frame. We're also going to get the camera of the player. So we can say game.workspace.currentCamera, because that will be the player's local camera, which they'll be able to access. This camera object is going to be called current camera whenever a player's in the game. And whenever a player edits their camera, it only changes for them, no one else in the game. So each player has their own current camera in the workspace. And then we're going to want to have a variable for item roller. So game.workspace, wait for child item roller. So we're waiting for that to be added into the game. And we're also going to want to have black BG. And that's going to be the black background, which we will fade in and out whenever they open up the shop or they close the shop. Okay, so we're also going to have current box, which is the value we talked about earlier. So script.parent, wait for child, current box. And we also want to have a variable at the top here, local player equals game.players.local player. Now this is going to be the player who is running the shop and the player which this code is running on. So we can say game.players.local player. Now, what we want to do, we want to say replicated storage dot open shop dot on client event :connect open bracket function open bracket close bracket and drop a few lines. Now this is an event and it's going to run whenever someone opens that shop, whenever that remote event is triggered. So what we want to do is we want to set their camera type to scriptable. This means that we can manipulate the camera and put the camera wherever we want to focus on. So in this case, we want to focus it on the item roller, on the box. So we have to change it to scriptable. So camera type equals scriptable, just like this. We're then going to want to fade the black BG. So we can say for I equals, so we're going from 1, which is completely transparent, to 0, which is opaque, not transparent. And we're going down in an increment of negative 0.1. So every time it loops through, the background transparency is going to be, or I, is going to be changed by negative 0.1. So we're going to set black BG's background transparency to whatever the I value is going to be. And then we can do wait 0.05 so that it doesn't run immediately and so that we can see it changing and fading. We're then going to want to wait a short amount of time. We'll just do wait 0.2 seconds just so that we can see the fade transfer. And we're going to want to interpolate the camera. Now this means if the camera is currently at one location and we want to move it to another one smoothly without just changing it, we can interpolate it so that it smoothly goes from one point to another point. So we can say camera interpolate, and we're going to take the where we want it to go. So we want it to start off at box 0. So we can say item roller, and then in square brackets, say box 0 dot cam part C-frame. Okay, so the cam part, remember, is what I said was where the camera is going to be looking at. So it's going to be this part, and we want it to look in this direction. So let's go back to our local script, and we want to say cam part.cframe item roller, and we want to say exactly the same thing, box 0 dot hitbox dot cframe 0.1. So normally you will specify 2 different C frames, okay, for it to go from one to the other. But we want to set it to box 0 because that's where we start off. So we can choose it to start off at box 0 and end at box 0. So it's not actually interpolating, it's just setting the camera to that box 0's cam part. So now, once the camera is looking at that box, we can say shop frame dot visible equals true. And then we can fire off the bindable event, which we'll work with later by saying script.parent.initiate shop :fire. And you'll see why we're doing this later on when we code that bindable event. But for now, we want to fade that we want to fade that frame again so that now that the camera is pointing to the box, we can fade it back so they can actually see the items in the boxes. So we can just copy this code from earlier, this for loop, and change it slightly. So we're going to change it from I equals 1, 0, negative 0.1. We can do 0. So it starts off at 0, opaque. It goes to 1, which is transparent. And this time, we're incrementing it by 0.05 each time, which is not negative, it's just 0.05. That should be everything done for opening up the shop. Let's go and test it out, see if it works. We're going to go and play the game as a player, and we're going to manually fire off this event. So we can do game.replicated storage. What was it? It was open shop, and we can just do fire all clients because we're the only ones in the game. So you can see it has faded the GUI. It has opened up it's faded the black BG. It's opened up the shot frame, and it's pointed our camera to look at the first box, box 0. And if you don't believe me, if we have a look in workspace and we click on the item roller, box 0, you can see that is the selected box. So the camera's pointing to that box because the camera C frame is set to the cam part, which is just here. It's pretty cool. You can see nothing works so far. None of the buttons work, but that's what we're going to be coding now. Right, so the next big thing that we're going to do is we're going to code it so that we get all the data for each specific item. But before we do that, let's just insert all of the remote events and remote functions that we're going to need when we are programming the rest of this script. So these are all of the remote functions, remote events that we're going to be using. They won't be of use now, but if we get them all added in, you'll see what they're used for later on, and it will make the tutorial a lot quicker. So let's insert into replicated storage some remote functions. We're going to have 3 remote functions, and we're going to have 4 remote events. So let's just duplicate 3 more, and let's name the first remote function create transaction. The second one is going to be called get tools bought. And the third one is going to be called request information. And then the remote events, we've got open shop. Our second one's called close shop. Our third one is going to be called equip tool. And our fourth one is going to be called player reset. Okay. We've got all of our remote events and functions in here, and now we can continue to program the rest of it. Right, so the bindable event, initiate shop, which we're firing here, is going to show all of the data for each item. It's going to get the data for each specific item that we're looking at, and it's going to update the price, whether it's equipped or not, and it will also show us the name of the item equipped and whether it has a description or something. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another event for this bindable event here. So we can just paste same code from earlier, this event. We can get rid of everything inside of it, and we can change open shop to initiate shop. Initiate shop. And we can change replicated storage to script.parent. Just like that. We also need to change onClient event to event, just like this. So now that we've done that, we can start coding the bindable event. Now what we're going to do is we're going to need to define 2 more variables, and they're going to be called disabled button color and enabled button color. And this will all make sense in a minute. The disabled button color is, well, actually I'll show you what it does in a moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to firstly get the current box value. Okay, so current box is going to be the box which we're currently looking at, which the camera is currently pointing to. So we can say local box name equals current box. So this could be box 1, box 2, or box 3. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to say box name dot value equals 0. So we've got a variable for this box, okay? And we're setting this to 0 because if it's at box 0, which it currently is, it'll just be set to 0. If it's box 1, we'll set it to 1. And if it's box 500, it would be set to 500. So you don't need the box, you just need the number because it's an int value. What we're going to do is we're going to set, well, because it's currently at box 0, we can't go back, we can only go forward. So we're going to make the back button just grey, so it looks like it's disabled. So we can say back.imageColor3 equals disabled button color. And this disabled button color is a greyish color, darkened color, which will make the button look as if it's greyed out. And obviously the enabled button color is just 255, 255, 255, which is an RGB value for completely white, so it will just make the button look completely bright. So we can say forward.imageColor3 equals enabled button color. So this is just helping the user know what they're supposed to click to make it a little bit easier and it makes your shop look more professional. What we're going to do now is get the information for the specific box we're currently looking at. So every time we click the back button or the forward button, we're going to fire this initiate shop event, and it's going to get the information for the new box and update the description, title, buy button, and the price, of course, which is going to be in the buy button. So what we can do is we can just create a value called model. So local model equals nil. This will make sense in a moment. Zoom in a little bit so we can see. And what we're doing is we're going to get the model of the tool which is currently selected. So remember, box name.value is going to be set to a number. So we can get the current selected box by saying box ... box name, just like this. So that's going to return box 0. So we're going to use this, and we have a for loop to loop through everything inside of box 0. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to say for I, object in pairs. Then we can say item roller, and then we can say in square brackets box ... box name .value, and then in square brackets we just want to put this in square brackets here. So we need to get rid of this square bracket. There we go. So we're finding the box, which is called box, and then concatenating it with the value of box name. So that'll be box 0. Then we want to get children. So get everything inside of this box. And we want to say do, and drop a line, and there we go. So this will start to make more sense, but we're currently looking inside of this box model here. Okay, now what we're going to do is because remember, there's going to be a model of the tool inside of this box. Okay, for example, it's going to look like this because the drill is going to be somewhere in this box, right? Like this. Okay, so what we're going to do is, let's just go back to the script. We want to check, so we're looping through every object inside of this box model, and we're going to say if object is a model, then we can say model equals object. Okay, so we're attributing this model of the tool to this model variable, and then we're going to say shop frame dot model name dot value equals object dot name. Okay, so updating this value called model name to whatever the tool inside this box is called. So if the tool is called superpower drill, then model name is going to be called superpower drill, and we're going to use this later on for a lot of different things, and you'll see what it's used for later on. So what we're doing here is we've now, our model variable is now set to whatever tool is in this box. So whatever tool you're going to get if you buy when the camera is set to box 0 or box 1 or box 2. And every time we move the camera forward or backwards, we're running this bindable event which is going to update the box value, and it's going to look inside of this new box to find the tool, and then it's going to set that model value to the object of the tool. Now, if you don't understand this, don't worry, it will start to make more sense as we go along. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get the data for this specific object. For example, how much it costs, the description, the title, etc. Whether we've already got it. And we're going to have to use our remote function here, which we're going to use the request information remote function. And we're going to be, the reason we're using a remote function is because we're getting the data from the server so that it can't be hacked or exploited. For example, if you had this information on the client, then someone could easily change the price to 1 coin so that the exploiter, or he or she, could have that item without having to pay for it. They could exploit your items, which isn't very good. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a request to this remote function and get the data for this specific item. So to invoke this remote function, all we have to do is say local data equals game dot replicated storage, and then we can say request information. So to invoke the server, what we have to do is we have to say local data. So that's going to be our variable where the data which is going to be returned is going to. And then we're going to say replicated storage. And then we're going to get the request information remote event. And then we can say colon invoke server. And then in brackets we can say we can send over the model. So we're giving the script where the remote function is going to execute. We're giving it the model which we want to find the data for, and then we're going to code on the server. We're going to use that model to find the tool, and we're going to send back as a table a bunch of data which we can show in our GUI. So now that we've done that, we actually need to script the remote function on the server. So we can go back to our server script in server script service, and we're going to do an on server invoke function. So to do that, you just need to say game.replicated storage, and then we can say wait for child, and we can say request information dot on server invoke. So when the server has been invoked by the client, we say equals function, and then we want to pass 2 arguments, one for the player that sent this remote function, that invoked it, and the other argument is going to be the item. Okay, so we've got our 2 arguments. We can drop a line, and you can see that an end has been added to the script here. So what we want to do is we want to create a variable in this server script, which is going to be the table where all of the data is stored. So we can say local data equals, and then we can make a table like this. So a table, as I said earlier, it holds multiple values which can change, so multiple variables. So we now just want to make a couple more variables to use for getting the data, and we're going to have some variables that are going to store each piece of data. So the price, whether it's bought already or not, the description, the title, etc. So we can say local bought equals false. We're going to want a description, so local description. And now to get the description, we're going to have to go into the tool models folder, and we're going to have a folder in here, and we're going to call it information. Okay, so inside of tool models, we're going to find the name of the item, and we're going to create a folder. Now we're going to want to click on the plus here for our tool and insert a folder, and we're going to call this folder information. Okay, and we're going to want to put inside of that folder 3 values. Okay, so we're going to want to have 1 int value, which is going to be our cost, and then we're going to have 2 string values. It's going to be the cost type and the description. So a quick description about the item and a cost type, so that we know what the user is going to be paying in. Now this might be useful if you're going to want the player to be able to buy items with different currencies, so maybe gems or coins. But if you're just sticking to one currency type, as we are here, you won't really need to have a cost type. But we're going to include it anyway, just in case you want to add that into your shop. So to get the description, we need to insert our 3 values first. So in they go. And we're just going to want to copy this folder into all of the other tools. Now you're going to want to update the information values for each tool. So you might want to change the description, the cost type, and the coins. So if you wanted your tool to cost 1,000 coins, you'd set the cost value in the information folder to 1,000 or whatever you want it to be. And you need to make sure that is different for all your different tools, else they're going to cost the same amount of money. So to get the description, we just have to say game.serverStorage, and then we can say .toolModels, and then in square brackets we can say item.name, because that's the name of our tool, the object, the argument which we passed. Then we're just going to say .information to get the folder, .description, .value, and that is now bounded or attributed to the description variable. So what we can do now is do the same thing for the title, for the cost type, etc. So we can say local title equals item.name, because that's just obviously the name of the item which you're passing. The cost, local cost equals game. But we can just do the same thing here, copy this line of code for the description and paste it in here. And we just need to change description to cost. And what we want to do now is do the cost type. So local cost type equals same thing. I'm just going to change it to cost type. And what we want to do now is we want to check to see whether the user has already bought the item, and then we can return whether it's already bought or not, so that we can say whether the item needs to be equipped or if it needs to be bought. So to do this, we need to check to see if the item is in the player tools folder, okay, because the player tools folder is their inventory. It's going to show all of the different tools which they own. So we can check to see if the item is currently inside of that folder, and if it is, we know that they've already bought that tool. So we can say if game.serverStorage player tools, and then in square brackets we're going to do the player's name. So their folder will be called their name, so .alvinBlox, for example, or .shedletsky, and then we can say in fact we want to do find first child, because there might not be the item might not be there. So just in case we get an error, we can say item.name. So find first child, item.name. So if the tool is in their inventory, then we know that they have bought it. And we can set bought to true. Else, if they don't have the item, we can just say bought equals false, just like this. So now we know whether the player will have bought the tool or not. So what we need to do now is we need to insert all of this data into the data table. And then we can just return it back to our local script. So very easy. We just have to do table.insert, and then we want to give the table which we're inserting these values into, which is data. We want to give the so whereabouts in the table the first item is going to go. So that's in position 1. And the piece of data that we want to insert into the table is going to be our title. Now we're going to want to copy and paste this. We're going to do it 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 table.inserts. We're going to change the number in the middle to increase by 1 each time. So we have a value going into position 1, a value going into position 2, position 3, position 4, position 5. You get the idea. Data is going to be kept the same. We just want to update the last parameter here. So that's going to be the data. So the second one, we're going to have description. Third one is going to be the cost. Fourth one is going to be the cost type. And the fifth one is going to be bought. So what we're doing is we're just inserting all of this data into the table in order. So the order is the number in the middle, so what position it's in. The first parameter, data here, as you can see in yellow, is the table which we're inserting into, and the last value is the data we're inserting at that position. So we're doing it 5 times to insert all these values into our table, and your table, when all of these values have been inserted, might look something like this. So we could have mega drill. This drill is mega for the description. The cost, 350. The cost type could be coins, and whether it's bought or not, so true or false. And you can see this data gives us a lot of information about whether the tool is bought or not, what the tool does, how much it costs, how much you're going to pay, and the name of the drill. So we can return this back to our local script, and we can update our GUI with the values for this specific drill. And every time they click the backward and forward button, we can run this and request information again, and we can get the data for that item. So to return it back, we just need to say return data, and that is going to send back the full table to the local script. So what we can do now is head back to the local script and try and see if the data has been sent over. So let's go back into the local script, and data should be a table now, okay? So it should look like what we just made with our 5 values, and we should be able to manipulate that table so that we can get the values out of it and put it into our GUI. So what we can do is we can say for I, comma v in pairs, and then we can say data, so looping through the data. Do, you can drop a line, and we can say print v, okay? So what we can do is we can go and check this out, and hopefully the data will be sent back to us. Okay, so we're getting an error here, and it says AlvinBlox is not a valid member of folder. And this is because we haven't created a folder for our player's data to go in. So we need to write a script that when the player joins the game, we can create a folder to load all of their data into, and then save it when they leave the game.